Since the dawn of the game, fusions have been a companion to how the game functions. It reaches into a deep, primal desire to see two things you really like and see how they turn out when you smash them together into something new. Early fusions were rough. Not only did their combined forms rarely make sense as expressions of the base material, the mechanics of it were awful! Polymerization was the only spell in the game that could accomplish fusion summoning, so combine that with specific material requirements, a lack of consistent tutoring, and no meaningful effects, both from a proactive or defensive standpoint, and you had monsters that were tough to get into action, didn't always have stats worth using, and folded to the same removal as everything else. That's not to say that fusion monsters didn't have a big impact in the early stages of the game, but it was usually in spite of their mechanics, not because of them, as Magical Scientist and Cyberstein can attest. But we've come a long way since 2002. Nowadays, there's a fusion spell for just about anything, from archetypal support to general utility, and this month's Quasar Commander has requested we celebrate this most monumental of card archetypes by covering all the Polymerization and fusion cards, at least the non-archetypal ones, all of their support, and rank them from worst to best. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time for Polymerization Explained. Today's episode is possible thanks to viewers like you, as well as my patrons. If you like what I do here, I would super appreciate it if you'd subscribe to help us reach another wonderful milestone video, and if you want to support me directly while getting some awesome benefits, check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. So what's the deal with, well, this video? Well, we're going to be going over any card with polymerization or fusion in its name, or in its card text. But like we said previously, we're leaving off any archetypal fusion cards because their power largely comes from the theme they're attached to. So they operate on an entirely different axis than the general polymerizations that are looking to accomplish something else entirely. Also, we'll cover the support first, then move on to ranking the fusion, since it wouldn't really make sense to rank fusion support alongside the fusion effects themselves. Dark Karibo is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster with 300 attack and 200 defense, and when a card or effect is activated that targets any number of Fiend and or fusion monsters that you control, or when your Fiend or fusion monster is targeted for an attack as a quick effect, you can discard this card, then target one of them. Until the end of the turn, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, its effects activated on the field cannot be negated, and if this card is sent from the hand to the grave by a card effect, you can add a polymerization from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So sadly, the two effects don't really synergize with each other, since the hand trap effect has you sending it from hand to graveyard as cost, but it does mean it has two modes to it, which is pretty nice. The interesting thing is that it doesn't negate the targeting effect aimed at it like you might expect. Rather, it tries to prevent bad things from happening to it by giving protections to the monster and to the effect itself, though it kind of makes sense since you have the option of triggering it yourself. But that's far afield of what we're here for. As a way to get polymerization when sent from the hand to the grave by a card effect, which commonly means fusion summoning is involved, it's okay. While there's enough wiggle room for this to work in general builds, it's clear this is meant to work with evil heroes, and in that build, this may have some utility as the deck does have a place for the original polymerization. But as a general piece of support, it's not at the top of the list, though it's adorable to see Karibo going through his evil little guy arc. Monster Eye is a level 1 Dark Fiend monster with 250 attack and 350 defense, and you can pay 1,000 life points to add a polymerization from your grave to your hand. Couldn't be simpler really, and it even lacks a hard once per turn restriction. This means if you need fuel for discarding, Monster Eye basically lets you substitute that cost for 1,000 life points. Though for its intended purpose, yeah, it can't just get you a yarded polymerization, though Monster Eye itself isn't material for any specific summon, so it's not like it's simplifying a recipe. And with stats like that, it ain't sticking around the field for very long, so it's either going to get run over or used as link material. Though, good luck getting a copy of this. This thing has only ever been printed in the TCG twice, and even then, only as World Championship pack cards. So if you want one, you're going to have to keep a real good eye out for them. Synchro Fusionist is a level 2 Dark Spellcaster monster with 800 attack and 600 defense, and if this card is sent to the grave as a Synchro Material monster, you can add a spell card from your deck to your hand with Polymerization or Fusion in its card name, except Diffusion Wave Motion. Ah, that old footnote. Back before they printed Diffusion Wave Motion to keep it from being treated as a fusion card. Still waiting for that Sephiroth Lady Errata, devs. Anyway, this is an important part of really involved Synchro Climb decks, having this hit the field, then using it as Synchro material, getting you instant fusion, which in turn gets you more non-tuner material for Synchro summons. Combined with ways to recycle both cards, and you could summon up a Storm. Granted, it was pretty high rolly, and no theme has ever come along that's a fusion and Synchro based one that's used this card in a way that's felt, I guess organic is the best way to put it. But it is very cool to have a monster from the Polymerization artwork be an actual monster, though it does remove some level of it being an abstraction of the fusion process. Lord knows the amount of work people have put in trying to identify any other monster that shows up in Polymerization inspired arts. King of the Swamp is a level 3 water aqua monster with 500 attack and 1000 defense. This card in your hand, field, or grave can be used as a substitute for any one fusion material whose name is mentioned on the fusion monster card, but the other material must be correct, and you can discard this card to the graveyard to add a Polymerization from your deck to your hand. Now this one's a card. During the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, fusion substitute monsters like this were used to help ease the burden of making those early fusion monsters. King of the Swamp is that, with an additional upside. Because it doesn't just have to be a substitute for fusions, it could also be substituted for fusion. Or specifically Polymerization. This works especially well in decks that run original poly, but also do funky stuff with using material in the graveyard. This hit the height of its popularity when tier limits were a thing. Not only could it substitute the named material for 2 of their boss monsters, one of which was a whole-ass fusion monster in and of itself, it was an aqua like many members of the theme. This is a strong contender for any deck that likes using original Polymerization and especially likes using named material. It's the glue that holds those decks together. Fitting for a big creature that looks like it's made entirely of glue. Kaitop is a level 4 winged dinosaur monster with 1400 attack and 1000 defense, and if your opponent controls 2 or more face-up monsters except wind monsters, those monsters cannot target this card for attacks, and during your main phase, you can add a Polymerization from your deck to your hand. Also, if this card is banished, you can special summon it, then you can add a Polymerization from your graveyard to your hand. This is a very dinosaur-flavored piece of fusion support. Plucking a Polymerization from the deck is one thing, but the banishing part is very Giant Rex-coded, and will probably trigger under similar circumstances. It doesn't help that Kaitop is the named material in another fusion, and that card is generic field spell support, so it's good to see that this winged wonder is always out there boosting the power of pretty busted card sub-themes. I'm starting to think that Kaitop is a bit of a spike. Keeper of Dragon Magic is a level 4 Dark Dragon monster with 1800 attack and 1300 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can discard a card to add a Polymerization normal spell or fusion normal spell from your deck to your hand. You can also reveal a fusion monster in your extra deck to special summon one of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on that monster from your grave in face down defense position, but you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters the turn you activate either of this card's effects. This is another fantastic card, letting you trade in any card from your hand into a number of the most powerful cards in the game. And if you've got a fusion deck that needs particular monsters, Keeper has it covered. Heck, this card would be a menace for a time, as it was a great way to enable Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. You get Dark Magician out of the grave, and hey, that's the big guy and a dragon effect monster. And you even searched a Polymerization to go along with it. It's a highly versatile card that just so happens to occupy the most popular type and attribute of the whole game, so I expect we'll keep seeing this card from time to time. Magnum the Reliever is a level 8 Light Fiend fusion monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, requiring a monster from your hand and a monster special summoned from the deck as material. Very eclectic of it. You can target one Polymerization spell or fusion spell in your grave to place that card on the bottom of the deck, then draw a card. And when another card or its effect is activated as a quick effect, you can banish a Polymerization spell or a fusion spell from your grave, then target one card on the field and destroy it. This may seem strange and unwieldy, and it kinda is, but I've played a few decks that can make excellent use of this card. It occupies a strange space of being both removal and recycling while giving you card advantage. And it's not bad in the battle department either, though they really should have done a second pass on the actual artwork here. Not that it's bad, but it does look like an alt costume version of Vanquished Soul Caesar Valius, and this is not doing my lore brain any favors. Guardian Chimera is a level 9 Dark Beast fusion monster with 3300 attack and defense, requiring 3 monsters with different names from your hand and or field, with at least 1 coming from each. If this card is fusion summoned by a spell card or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used as fusion material from the hand, and if you do, destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards used as material from the field. And while Polymerization is in your grave, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. If Magnum has been an interesting addition, Guardian Chimera has been a lifesaver. The card requiring generic monsters means that it plays well with most hands and usually pays for itself, meaning it has a big cost for entry, but you get your investment back. And that gets even better if any of the material monsters have effects of their own when used as fusion material. And the power level scales depending on how much you want to invest in it, though I would highly advise you make sure Polymerization is in your graveyard because adding targeting protection is great for sustainability and ensuring you get those cards back from Guardian's effect. I wouldn't want infinite impermanence to ruin your day after all. And if the spell you use to bring this out is a quick play one, oh, the opposition is in for it. And you get to do it in style too. This is basically what Amorphages would look like if they were cool. Predaplant Verte Anaconda is a Link 2 Dark Plant monster with 500 attack, requiring any 2 effect monsters as material. You can target a face-up monster on the field and it becomes dark until the end of the turn, and you can pay 2,000 life points and send a fusion or polymerization, normal or quick play spell card from your deck to the grave to make this effect become that spell's effect when that card is activated. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn. This card is just downright diabolical. It's a huge boon to all fusion and poly spell cards because now they all live in the extra deck. And with Link monsters being so accessible, it's no surprise that Make Verte became a chart-topping hit. You'd see decks that had no business fusion summoning slap in a copy of this, Red Eyes Fusion or Fusion Destiny into the main, and make their outrageous boss monster of choice. The dark attribute changing was really just some icing on the cake to facilitate certain super poly situations, and to pay lip service to the fact that I guess this is a Predaplant card, so it should have something to do with it, at least a little bit. But now it's been identified as the problem it was, and has been sent far, far away. Verte Anaconda is banned, and I don't think we'll be seeing it causing problems anytime soon. Which, is what I said about Snatch Steal, but that seems to have dodged the list again, so, hey, what do I know? Evil Mind is a normal spell card that you can only activate if you control a fiend monster, and you resolve one of these effects based on the number of monsters in your opponent's grave. With 1 or more, you draw a card. 4 or more, and you can add a hero monster or dark fusion from your deck to your hand. Or with 10 or more, you can add a polymerization spell or fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. So the hero inclusion could possibly disqualify this, but it's kind of like Dark Karibo. You don't have to use heroes with this, but it does have some added functionality for them. Not that it makes it much better though. You may find it hard to actually reach 10 monsters in your opponent's grave, so if you aren't on heroes, you may find it hard to activate this card profitably. I mean, with 1 it is an upstart goblin, but at that point it ceases to be polymerization support. In that regard, Evil Mind gets 0 stars. What kind of evil creature came up with this thing? Fusion Recovery is a normal spell card that targets a polymerization in your grave and a monster in your graveyard that was used as material for a fusion summon, and add them to your hand. This has gotten both more and less useful as time's gone on. More so in the fact that the quality of material monsters has gotten better, so giving you a way to put them back into your hand to use them again is great. The problem is that the other card is original polymerization, which, as we touched on, is good if the surrounding cards also help to make it good. But by itself, it's incredibly basic. If you have the right intersection of cards, this can be a very powerful tool, but for decks that have already solved this kind of problem with their own infrastructure, you're not exactly going to be welcoming the big grabby claw. Fusion Sage is a normal spell card that adds a copy of polymerization from your deck to your hand. Yep, it's just more copies of Poly, not much to say here. Well, there is something to be said. This is an extra fusion name in your grave to use with Magnum the Reliever, but that's the long and short of it. If you want more copies of Polymerization, then great. If not, avoid this as needed. Honestly though, I'm surprised we haven't seen references or retrains of this guy in the art, given Yu-Gi-Oh's penchant for giving notable characters story arcs or little vignettes. This dude has a lot of style. If MST can have an archetype, I think he can. Revoke Fusion is a normal spell card that discards a polymerization to the grave to send a fusion monster from your extra deck to the grave, and special summon 1 monster from your hand that is listed as a fusion material monster on that card. And the special summon monster is sent to the grave during the end phase of this turn. That's kinda cool. I wish it was a bit more flexible though, like setting the polymerization from deck or summoning the monster from the deck. As it stands, Revoke basically asks you to have the same number of cards assembled as a regular fusion summon. Like, imagine this in a branded deck. It's a free Albaz summon, which means you get to scoop up a monster, and you get to put an Albaz fusion into the graveyard to benefit from its effect during the end phase. But this design is sadly too bogged down in early game design to realize its full potential. Also, putting a lightning bolt on card art that already existed does not constitute a new piece. How can the effect be any good if they're already getting cheap with the presentation? Kaio Reigetsu is an equipped spell card that special summons a level 4 or lower fairy, spellcaster, winged beast, or beast warrior monster from your hand, and if you do, equip it with this card. Then you can return all dragon monsters on the field to the hand. During the end phase, if this card is in the grave because it was sent there from the spelling trap zone this turn while face up, you can add a polymerization spell, fusion spell, or fusion parasite from your deck to your hand. This is easily one of the funniest pieces of support we have here. It's a big Arc V reference with all the hands and bracelets belonging to the various Zuzu clones from throughout the series, and it's not actually that bad. It gets a monster out of your hand for free, and you get to essentially wipe out all dragon monsters on the board. And then you get a fusion card later on once that equip falls off for whatever reason. You have to be on a specific deck to make this work though, namely a fusion one that uses one of the above types, but I think it's got some real potential. Strange that the bonus effect only gets you a fusion card when there are a Synchro and Xyz representative among the ranks here, but, well, there's a reason this card also searches Fusion Parasite. Fusion Recycling Plant is a field spell card that, once per turn, lets you discard a card to add a polymerization from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And once per turn, during the end phase, you can target a monster in your grave that was used as fusion material for a fusion summon this turn and add it to your hand. Hey, this is pretty slick. Any card in your hand can now become polymerization, and it refunds you a fusion material during each end phase, which also incentivizes you to do some quick fusing during your opponent's turn. This is like everything I wanted from fusion recovery, and I'm here for it. It's just a solid piece of support for fusing. And it's even better for me because this card has a big story to tell, because that there in the background, that's Endymion the Magical Citadel, which means everything here is tied to the Magical Nation storyline. So get ready, because Monster Eye, Supply, Anti-Raigeki, Magical Hats, Ancient Telescope, Anti-Fusion Device, Type 0 Magic Crusher, and many more are going to show up the next time the Magists get into a little fit. Fusion Duplication is a normal trap card that targets a fusion or polymerization, normal or quick play spell card in either player's grave, and on resolution, you banish that spell, then apply that spell's effect when that card is activated. This is a strange card because it usually saves my ass when something goes wrong, but I never like seeing it. Probably because it doesn't really do anything on its own, and you gotta wait to use it. But in a pinch, you can drop a fusion on your opponent out of nowhere, provided you have all the material available. And it's double funny if you can steal your opponent's card to accomplish it. Copying an opposing super polymerization sure does sound like the perfect karmic response. Definitely run this if you find yourself needing an extra little trick to throw off the competition, but if you've already got a well-oiled machine, I think you're asking for trouble using this card. I don't think the oil the duplication process makes here is well at all. Fusion Reserve is a normal trap card that reveals a fusion monster in your extra deck and adds one of the fusion material whose name is specifically listed on that card from your deck to your hand. Then, you can add a polymerization from your grave to your hand. Hey, that's basically fusion recovery again, but you grab the monster out of the deck. And sadly, it's slower too. That's a real shame. An effect like this on a spell card would have been the bee's knees, like a kind of fusion preparation of rites. But as it stands now, it's just going to have to languish in obscurity until the stars align again to make this worthwhile. Wild that they keep showing off how Synchro Fusionist has the evil grippers, though. Pendulum Dimension is a continuous trap card that, if you special summon a fusion, synchro, or Xyz monster using any number of pendulum monsters as material while this card is already face up on the field, you can activate the appropriate effect, but you can't apply the same one for the rest of the turn, even if this card leaves the field. If it's a fusion summon, you special summon a monster from your deck with the same original level as that fusion monster in defense position, but its effects are negated. If you made a synchro monster, you add a polymerization from your deck to your hand. And if you made an Xyz, you can take a tuner from your deck with an equal or lower level than the Xyz monster's rank and either add it to your hand or special summon it. So this is less polymerization and more using all the extra deck type support. It pre-Link. If we get a good deck that uses both fusions and synchros while using pendulums, we may be onto something here. But remember, Synchro Fusionist is still looking for something like that, and it doesn't even need to include pendulums to do so. Wild how much traction we're getting out of that little goober. Alright, the polymerization support is all covered. Now it's time to rank those polys. Happy Pride Month, by the way. Number 26. Miracle Synchro Fusion is a normal spell card that removes from play, from your side of the field or your graveyard, the fusion material listed on a fusion monster card that lists a synchro monster as a fusion material monster, and special summons that fusion monster from the extra deck. And if this set card is destroyed by your opponent's card effect and sent to the grave, draw a card. At current, this card has 23 targets, and while there are a few where this is the optimum way to summon them, most of them have a much better way to deploy them instead. And getting a draw from your opponent, cracking this as a decoy, doesn't really make up for the lack of utility. Between the lack of viable targets and the setup required, it's a miracle this thing saw print at all. Number 25. Ultra Polymerization is a normal spell card that has you paying 2,000 life points to fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck, using 2 monsters you control as fusion materials. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation, and you can banish this card from your grave, then target a fusion monster that was fusion summoned with this card's effect to special summon all the fusion materials used for its fusion summon from your graveyard, but change their attack and defense to 0. Also, they have their effects negated. It effectively allows you to fusion summon a monster without consuming its materials. Commonly, you'll be aiming to use these monsters for another summon. You can link them off, fuse again, sync, Xyz summon, all that nonsense, letting you get a little extra mileage out of your cards. It even protects you from your opponent's responses. So if the card has this many upsides, why is it second to last in terms of all polymerizations? Well, it asks a lot of you for what is essentially little return. You can only use on-field material, and only 2, so it's incredibly inflexible. And most themes that dabble in fusion plus another form of summoning already have those bases covered in their own engine. And while locking out responses to it does give it a mystical aura akin to super polymerization, ultra polymerization can't be done at quick speed to trick your opponent, nor can it be used to steal your opponent's cards. So that extra little effect just forces through the first fusion summon and nothing else, which is just, I don't feel is worth 2,000 life points. It's a lot of flash, but no substance. Hey, I thought Yuri was supposed to be good at this whole fusion summoning thing. Number 24. Future Fusion is a continuous spell card, and during your first standby phase after this card's activation, show 1 fusion monster in your extra deck and send the fusion materials listed on it from your main deck to the graveyard. During your second standby phase after this card's activation, fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck with the same name as the monster you showed, and target it with this card. When this card leaves the field, destroy that target, and when that target is destroyed, destroy this card. Now this one, I do feel bad for putting it so far down the list. Future Fusion has had a storied history of being an explosive way to set up your graveyard, and should it survive long enough, gift you with an incredibly powerful monster. But iconic cards have a way of getting their text eroded. Future Fusion was so good that it had to be banned, but when the devs wanted to take it off the ban list, they made some tweaks. That's the version I just mentioned. The old version revealed the fusion monster and sent the materials right when the card was activated. The first standby phase would then be a breather turn, and then on the second you would get the fusion monster, which basically works the same as here. But that 1 turn delay on sending the material really sank any utility this card had. Or at the very least, its reliability as a way to vent cards took a nosedive. The only reason it's not lower on this list is that it even now still has a chance of being useful, as opposed to how lackluster the other 2 can be. But hey, the future sure is looking bright from here. Number 23. Heavy Polymerization is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck, using 3 or more monsters from your hand or field as material. You can also banish monsters from your extra deck as material, up to the number of monsters your opponent controls, but you lose life points equal to the total attack of monsters banished this way when the monster is fusion summoned. So this has a very specific target audience. Monsters that require 3 or more material, with a significant number of those materials usually being found in the extra deck. It technically can cover other aspects, but if you're looking for another way to get a dark monster or a spellcaster ready for your fusion summons, you have better choices out there. Heavy should be reserved solely for situations in which there is no other way to get the monster, at the very least in a way that's feasible. A premium example is Cordius the Triphasic Dealman. Getting a Synchro, Xyz, and Link monster together is kind of a pain, but Heavy can send them right from the extra deck. And there are even options you can play that have 0 or question mark attack, so you don't even take any damage. But when it comes right down to it, you can only really effectively use this with gimmick targets, and its effectiveness is based on your opponent's board presence besides. So it's dangerous, unpredictable, and the results are more humorous than impactful. Great for casual decks, mind you, but for more serious events, well, you're gonna want to pack light. Number 22. Fusion Gate is a field spell card, and while this card is on the field, the turn player can fusion summon a fusion monster from their extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from their hand or field. So on top of giving our opponent the ability to fusion summon as well, we have to banish material to make this fusion summoning work. Though it's not all bad. The fact that it banishes actually makes it crucial for some old FTKs. Good old Electrum plus Gustav Max. So it's a pretty good trade-off for infinite fusion summons. But the use case is very narrow. Nowadays, fusion material has effects that help to enhance the experience, but they usually want to go to the grave to do that. Being banished runs counter to that. And our opponent can interrupt these plays with removal. So this card is best left in the past. Besides, it's very Digimon coded, it's not really in line with our aesthetics. Number 21. Greater Polymerization is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck using 3 or more monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, and if you do, it gains these effects. This card can't be destroyed by card effects, and it deals piercing battle damage. Like with Heavy, you can't just use 2, and this doesn't even pull from the extra deck for material, but I think Greater is better positioned because it actually enhances the monster that we summon. We aren't just enabling a wacky monster for the sake of it. Also, because our material is more restricted, we're less likely to be doing this for gimmicks, instead focusing on some monsters that have some real chutzpah. In fact, I've got a whole video grading all the cards you can make with Greater Polymerization. I had a ton of fun with it, but several things came to light as I was ranking them. Monsters that need that much material either already have the kind of protection Greater is offering, or aren't actual combat threats and thus can't make use of the piercing battle damage. There are a few great standouts, but part of the reason it's so low on the list here is that there are so many Raider options left. Number 20. Flash Fusion is a quick play spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion material, but destroy it during the end phase. This is a card I'm certain has potential, but never seems to make it into the deck list. El Shaddoll Fusion changed the game in regards to fusion summoning, letting you cheat out a whole new monster during the battle phase to close out games. Flash Fusion is a generic version of that, and losing your monster during the end phase isn't a problem if you just end the game right there. And if your fusion has protection from effect destruction, even better. The only real drawback I can see is that you can only use on-field material, so the flexibility problem is still present, but that's a minor issue. Well, I say a minor issue, but despite my faith in it, the card has never done anything competitive, and there isn't a sign that's going to change anytime soon. I would love to put it higher on the list for how much faith I have in the concept, but then whatever credibility I have left would be gone in a flash. Number 19. Harmonic Synchro Fusion is a normal spell card that sends a tuner and a non-tuner from your face-up field to the graveyard to special summon both of the following monsters from your extra deck. A Synchro monster that can be synchro summoned using just those 2 monsters in the grave as material, and a Fusion monster that can be fusion summoned using just those 2 monsters in the grave as material. But you can't special summon from the extra deck the turn you activate this card except Fusion or Synchro monsters. Of all the cards on this list, we're looking at the one with the most potential for shenanigans. Having to find the Venn diagram of materials that lets you summon 2 very distinct monsters is a mad scientist brewer's dream, mixing and matching materials to alchemize so many distinct and powerful combinations of creatures. Its own theme, Earthbound Servants, has more than a few recipes just given to you, but it's broad enough for all kinds of combinations to be possible. But it's that very same versatility that makes it so hard to use. The possibilities may be endless, but none of them seem to line up with anything competitively viable. It's capable of all kinds of off-the-wall combos, but it's far more concerned with doing those than contributing to a stable game plan, which hilariously means that Harmonic Synchro Fusion isn't very harmonious. Number 18. Double Fusion is a normal spell card that has you paying 500 life points to fusion summon a monster using monsters from your hand or field as material. Then, you can perform a fusion summon using monsters from your hand or field as material. Yeah, it does just what it says on the tin. It's kinda cool to have an additional fusion summon off of a single card, but I do have my concerns. Of all the fusion decks that I've played, they generally have triggers after your first fusion summon that helps you get the materials to perform another one. But with how double fusion works, you're not going to be getting those trigger effects until after that second fusion is performed, meaning you may not even be able to pull it off. Granted, you can always just not do a second fusion summon if it's not useful, but then what was the point of running the card? The only deck I can really think of that might need something like this is Dual Avatar to process all those tokens, and if you're playing Dual Avatar, you've got a lot of other things to worry about. Number 17. Ready Fusion is a normal spell card that has you paying 1000 life points to special summon a level 6 or lower non-effect fusion monster from your extra deck, but it can't attack, also destroy it during the end phase, and this is treated as a fusion summon. This is low on the list largely because it's not helping you to really fusion summon monsters. You're just about always playing this to cheat out a monster to use as material for something else. Not surprising, as level 6 monsters were on the rise around this time was printed, putting it in a position of utility that a certain other card we'll be talking about later doesn't have. But that card has the chance to highlight the power of some fusion monsters. Ready is just here to get fodder for seasoned synchro summons before going to the bin, and does mark a point on this list where cards stop being gimmicky and actually start having real game plans associated with them, so get ready for things to ramp up. Number 16. Overload Future Fusion is a continuous spell card that activates one of these effects. You can only use each effect of Overload Future Fusion once per turn. You can reveal a fusion monster in your extra deck and send a material whose name is mentioned on it from your deck to the grave, but for the rest of the turn you can't special summon it nor activate the effects of monsters with the same name as the one sent to the graveyard by this effect. Or you can fusion summon a Dark Machine fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing its materials from your graveyard. So we're getting into the fusion cards that allow you to use materials from your grave, a highly desirable trait for any fusion effect to have, especially if your deck is in the habit of sending viable materials straight to your graveyard, basically letting you double dip on your resources. Overload Future Fusion pulls double duty by sending a named material from anything to the graveyard and making Dark Machine fusions by composting cards from your graveyard. It's basically a fusion effect that sets up its own materials, but it comes with its own ways to interrupt it. As a continuous spell card, it has the same weakness as original Future Fusion does. Granted, it's capable of launching as soon as you play it, but it is susceptible to quick removal all the same. Also, the fact that it locks out the effects of what you send is a bit of a bummer. I know it's important for balance reasons, but honestly, I'm kind of over it. Number 15. Pendulum Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion materials. But if you have 2 cards in your Pendulum zones, you can also use cards in your Pendulum zones as fusion materials. This really leans into the things that make Pendulums unique. Using spell cards as materials is pretty funny, but they are still monster cards, so it's not like we're pulling any ultimate flagship Urzatron nonsense. Yet. And it doesn't even restrict you on the kinds of monsters you can use as material. As long as they're on the field, they're fair game, with the added pinch of pendulum monsters should they be in your pendulum zones. That being said, that does mean you are pretty much playing this exclusively in pendulum decks, and while we do have some really nifty ones that like fusion summoning, Metal Foes being among them, it may end up being a bit too narrow. Also, by doing this, you're getting rid of your pendulum scales, the thing that makes your theme unique. That being said, the art here is hilarious. They went through the effort of making pendulum card versions of the iconic Fiend and Dragon found on Polymerization, which means that one day we will get a pendulum version of Synchro Fusionist. That's just the law. Number 14. Dousing Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard, but only pendulum monsters can be used as fusion material for this card's effect. Whoa, wait, pendulum monsters? In my graveyard? It's more likely than you think. Between discarding, milling, or detaching Xyz materials, there's actually a ton of ways to get pendulums into the graveyard despite the rules. This has all the same quirks as Pendulum Fusion though. I just like that it uses graveyard material, so it's less intensive than having to use field material. But like with the previous version, you'll have to go digging for choices. Number 13. Signet Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a Cyberse fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. And if you control no monsters in the extra monster zone, you can also banish up to one Cyberse Link monster from your graveyard as fusion material. So at present, this card has 5 targets, 2 of which, Earth Golem and Violet Chimera, are far better deployed by other options, and Deceive Worm is meant to work specifically with a big Firewall Link monster that throws it into the graveyard directly. This leaves us 2 more monsters, and neither of them are super relevant. And maybe you want to do some big damage moves with Cyberse Clock Dragon, but that's about it. This one gets low marks just for how few meaningful targets it has, which is surprising because this is Cyberse. The whole internet is supposed to be open to you, but it's all been consolidated into the same 5 fusions. Number 12. Ghost Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck, using only zombie monsters you control as material. But if your life points are lower than your opponent's, you can also banish up to one zombie monster from your hand, deck, or grave as material. So it's kind of like a mini branded fusion, so long as you've got the ability to manipulate your life points consistently, which surprisingly we don't. That's more of a psychic type thing. In fact, with some vampire cards, you're more likely to gain life points than lose them, so that's something. Notably, because we can banish a zombie monster, this does actually have some applications with certain ones that love being banished, Shiranui being the prime example. That being said, zombies don't make for the best material to make a wide variety of fusion monsters. Granted, Zombie World can broaden those options to allow just about anything on your field or in your graveyard to function with this, but now you're going way too far for a card that, at base, doesn't really have a ton of fantastic options to begin with. So you should probably just ghost them. Number 11. Teleport Fusion is a quick play spell card that, during the main phase, fusion summons a Psychic Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing Psychic monsters from your field or graveyard as material. And if any number of face-up Psychic monsters you control that were special summoned from the extra deck are destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your grave, then target one of your banished Psychic monsters and special summon it. So it turns out the Psychic pool is pretty slim too. Granted, a lot of Metal Foes fusions are Psychics, but that's their whole brand, of course they do. And they certainly don't need the help, especially because if you banish them, they won't go to the face-up extra deck to be pendulum summoned again. There are some nifty targets though. This card releases in just a few days in the TCG to support a new wave of classic life point paying psychic monsters, and among them is a big fusion that flows into an earlier version of itself, and using graveyard material really makes it a cinch to bring it out. It also works particularly well with mutants because their fusions are psychics, letting you banish material first before shuffling them back into the deck with Mutant Cry. While the effective pool may be more shallow than the previous options here, the coolness of the pool is a big factor, and Teleport Fusion certainly has that it factor. Though, to be honest, I couldn't tell you where one of these monsters begins and the other ends. I can't teleport from another. Number 10. Primite Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a dragon fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling its materials from your field, grave, and or banishment into the deck, including a normal monster. You can also banish this card from your grave to add a level 5 or higher Primite monster from your deck or grave to your hand. So yeah, this is meant to be used in Primite decks, but what does that even mean, right? Like, it gets used as an engine in just about everything under the sun right now, so just because it has an effect for Primite shouldn't be an impediment to it being splashed. That being said, wow, does this have a lot of limitations on it. It only summons dragons, and a normal monster has to be involved. So unless the deck is already built around that kind of game plan, I'd rather just use Dragon's Mirror. At least then I can keep around the banished material for something. Though, I guess Primite Fusion also uses your banished material, so I might give it a shot. Number 9. Dark Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a Fiend fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, and your opponent can't target it with card effects this turn. This is a classic Evil Hero card, but has some funny applications in decks like Frightfur. Adding targeting protection to some monsters that otherwise wouldn't have it is kinda nutty, but it only lasts for a turn, so it's not like you're gonna be making a long-term defensive threat. It's gotten a bit better as new Evil Hero support has made this more accessible, but if there's one thing that's not going to change, it's the lighting. Barely seeing what's going on here is what makes it a dark fusion after all. Number 8. Magicalized Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a spellcaster fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or grave. Here it is, the Dragon's Mirror of Spellcasters. Magicalized Fusion has some wacky payoffs, giving you some otherwise unreasonable fusion monsters for the cost of just a little setup. You can get fantastic cards like Quintet Magician and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, or you can get incredibly silly with the great double-casted Caster. Honestly, the only thing holding this back from a better ranking is that the Spellcaster Fusion pool is a little constricted, and it's not exactly a popular type insofar as graveyard themes are concerned. Though, I have to ask, isn't every fusion that's done via a spell card a magicalized fusion? It's in the card type. Number 7. Overload Fusion is a normal spell card that fusion summons a Dark Machine fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or grave. This one doesn't have a very big pool itself, but it's got some killer options. One of the classics, Chimera Tech Overdragon, was actually a classic target for the old version of Future Fusion. You would activate that, reveal Chimera Tech Overdragon to dump every machine monster from your deck into the graveyard, then just skip the wait time by playing Overload Fusion to make it instantly, giving it like 20 attacks and a gargillion attack points. Probably was one of the reasons they had to expunge the original Future Fusion. But it also has application in decks like Ancient Gears with Chaos Giant, and even Gold Pride with Pinballer. It's even searchable by way of Evolution and Burst, which in turn provides the Overdragon extra attack effect to Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon and Pinballer should enough material be used. This one is getting high marks both for its applications and pedigree. No matter what you use it for, you're going to get a whole load of value from it. Number 6. Earthbound Fusion is a quick play spell card that you can only activate during the main phase, unless a card is in a field zone. Fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as material. And during your main phase, if a card is in a field zone, you can banish this card from your grave to special summon an Earthbound monster from your hand or graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Fusion or Synchro monsters. A restriction that ties into the fact that Harmonic Synchro Fusion was itself introduced and is supported by the Earthbound Servant archetype, though you might have also picked up from it needing a field spell on the board to unlock its fusion ability at all times. Now this card is dripping with potential. Dark is one of the most popular attributes in the game, and there are currently 183 Dark Fusion monsters that can be made with this card, spanning different archetypes, sets, series, and many more. And it gets even better if the deck involved randomly has a field spell to enhance their strategy, letting it go full El Shaddai Fusion. And if any Earthbound monsters would be helpful to you, you can just bring them out on a subsequent turn, only giving you a restriction that you are likely to be playing under anyway. So make sure to keep this card in mind for the future, cause it's bound to crop up sooner or later. Number 5. Necro Fusion is a normal trap card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard face down. They can't attack this turn. Yeah, any fusion monster. If your material gets sent away to the graveyard either by your whims or the opponent's, you can use them again to bring out your intended monster. And it comes with only a few strings attached. Not being able to attack that turn doesn't mean much because it's a trap card, so as long as you use it during your opponent's turn, you'll be fine. Heck, that adds some utility, because if your monster has an on-summon effect, you'll be able to spring it on them at an inappropriate time and ruin their day. But that being said, in a game where speed is a very big draw, having to wait to utilize your fusion is rough to say the least. And it's doubly harmful if the deck needs you to keep those fusion materials in rotation to utilize their effects, because while your cards are banished face down, very little is going to bring them back. This is another card I just know is waiting for its time to shine, and I'm looking forward to when some new life is breathed into it. But as it is now, it's pretty much dead on arrival. Number 4. Fusion Substitute is a normal spell card that is always treated as Polymerization. It fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters you control as fusion material. You can also banish this card from your grave and target a fusion monster in your graveyard to return it to the extra deck, then draw a card. This is one of those infamous cards that acts as an entirely other card, even during the deck building process. Hello, Umi. Now, this has its benefits. Anything that cares about Polymerization, the specific card, ends up working playing with Fusion Substitute. You can search it out with Fusion Sage or King of the Swamp, and it provides the targeting protection for Guardian Chimera. It even comes with the added bonus of being able to both recycle your fusions and draw you a card, an invaluable trait that actually made it a well-played card back when Zodiacs were at their prime. While most decks would be content to just play instant fusion to bring out Norden, a popular card we're going to get into shortly, Zoo ended up having so many utility Xyz monsters on the board that you could legitimately hard summon Norden with Fusion Substitute, getting the full benefit from it, making another rank 4, and then once you detach the materials and Norden was back in your graveyard, you could banish the substitute to get it back into your extra deck to use it again while filling up your hand. There are a lot of good things to say about Fusion Substitute, so why doesn't it see more play in decks that are currently running base Polymerization? Well, it largely comes down to them competing for space. They are the same card after all, so you can't run 3 of them, just a combination of up to 3 of both. And while Fusion Sub comes with a pretty sweet upside, it also loses the ability to use material in your hand, and that has a massive impact on playability. Many effects that grab you more material will generally do so by putting it into your hand and not by special summoning it, meaning they are completely out of reach of Fusion Sub's effect. There may be an argument for some kind of 2-to-1 split where you can grab Fusion Sub when the situation allows for it, but that means you're playing a deck that's running 3 Polymerization, and those are few and far between. Though, for what it's worth, you can still run both of them in domain format, so if you need another Polymerization counting card, look no further. As for the base game, for the time being, Fusion Sub is an interesting note in the game's history that is less held back by a type, attribute, or archetypal restriction, but just by good ol' sequencing. And let's be real, there's no substitute for quality. Number 3. Polymerization is a normal spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. Here it is, the OG. It can be used to fusion summon any monster that doesn't have its own restriction. It can use material from the hand or field, letting you convert material you've gathered up on there for powerful monsters, or spending cards right out of your hand to get the jump on your opponent. Now, keep in mind, if this was a list of all Fusion and Polymerization spell cards, this would be a lot lower. Cards like Shaddoll Fusion changed the game forever in this regard, but outside of archetypal cards, original Polymerization has been the go-to support when it comes to reliably accessing your Fusion monsters. It's so good, in fact, that it sometimes even supplements decks that have their own onboard Fusion plan just to help make things go according to plan, especially with cards made to support the card itself. We've already gone over plenty of such cards in this video, but that's not even all of them. We skipped over archetype-specific ones because, I've got videos for those already, hint hint nudge nudge, and Frightfurs have basically adopted Polymerization as part of their canon, with so many of their cards giving a boost to base Polymerization. Frightfur Patchwork is notable for being a card that is used consistently in Branded as a way to get a fusion effect and a free monster into your hand, which in turn can get you another Patchwork that can then cycle itself into a few more of those, depending on the number of copies played. From this point forward, the cards we talk about have to really cheat the system to show their stuff, which just goes to show just how over the years, Polymerization is still the gold standard for accessing purple cards. The perfect fusion of both form and function. Number 2. Instant Fusion is a normal spell card that has you paying 1,000 life points to special summon a level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, but it can't attack, also it's destroyed during the end phase, and this is treated as a fusion summon. So why is this card so high up on the list when Ready Fusion is so low on it? Well, barring any restrictions, this can summon any level 5 or lower fusion monster, including the effect ones. While it has been used since the beginning as a way to enable other cards, of Tribute and Synchro Summoning being chief among them, we would actually see people playing Instant Fusion to use the actual monster they summoned for their actual intended purpose. Thousandized Restrict could be summoned to snag a monster before being linked off, or you can get Millenniumized Restrict to try and ward off a hand trap. Infernoid could summon Evil to search a card, any deck could field Invoked Raijin to flip down a monster, or get El Shaddoll Winda to lock out special summons for a little bit, or any of the other 9 reasons a Shaddoll deck would want to get a free fusion in rotation. But possibly the most notable was Elder Entity Norden. We've already talked about it a smidge in regards to Fusion Substitute, but it's hard to fully convey just how much Norden had a stranglehold on the format when it was around. For the longest time, 4 was the level of kings. A fantastic pool of rank 4 Xyz monsters and level 8 synchros meant that the proper material at the proper time could win you the game, and the more of it you could generate, the better. Norden was, at first glance, unplayable, but if you cheated out with instant fusion, well, you're getting yourself an instant rank 4 monster. Silent Honor Arc in a pinch, a boosted Abyss Dweller to ward off both on-field monsters and the graveyard, get a tuner, and cards like Crimson Blader, Cyframe Lord Omega, and Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend are at your fingertips. And all of it was possible thanks to Instant Fusion, a card that is now currently limited. Norden, on the other hand, is now banned, and for great reason. And on top of all of that, Instant Fusion is largely self-sufficient. Just about every other card on this list is a spell that requires other resources to function, but Instant Fusion is a one-stop shop for what you need, when you need it, provided that it has the right level. And does it taste good. Best cup of ramen you can get your hands on for only 1/8 of your soul. Number 1. Super Polymerization is a quick play spell card that has you discarding a card to fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from either field as fusion material. And neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. I don't think I could have picked anything else to be in the number 1 spot. Super Polymerization is perhaps one of the most powerful, divisive cards in the entire game, and the devs don't seem to want to change that anytime soon. Back when it released, lots of cards had very narrow restrictions on what could be used as material for their summons. It was little more than an anime reference, but then the leash started to loosen. Omni Hero Fusion started releasing ones that could take any hero monster and combine them with any attribute to combine them into something new, so hero decks would use that as a way to break boards. Then Shaddolls showed up, and their monsters followed a very similar pattern, so they got to use it to break boards. And then we started getting fusions that used certain types, or attack values, or levels, and all of a sudden, anything could be a requirement for a fusion summon. This peaked when we got 2 very particular fusion monsters. Mud Dragon of the Swamp, whose fusion materials are 2 monsters with the same attribute but different types, and Garura, Wings of Resonant Life, whose materials are 2 monsters with different names but the same type and attribute. So now, decks that would normally have nothing to do with fusion summoning could now pretty comfortably fit a couple of monsters into their extra deck solely for the purpose of breaking boards by using monsters as fusion materials that they didn't own. And on top of all that, it can't be responded to. Once it hits the chain, it's going to resolve, and because it's at quick speed, you can do it at basically any time. Not just to interrupt your opponent, but during your own battle phase to fusion summon again to get more attacks. And yet, despite its power, the card is still at 3, as well as all of its relevant targets, and has been the subject of controversy ever since. I'm not going to wade judgment on that here. I do love using it, I admit, but I can see how having such a broad answer that can't be interacted with for such low opportunity cost would be a problem. But since they made it a huge part of the new Yubel support, it's not likely to get hit anytime soon. It's not just a good card, it's not just a great card. I wouldn't even call it an ultra card. It's just a really, really super one. And that covers all the polymerization cards we've decided to tackle today. Wow, what a doozy. Fusion summoning certainly has a long and storied history, and it was cool getting to dig through some of the best and worst of what the game had to offer. I normally end these with a bit of a quippy haha moment, but honestly it's just been really cool taking a look at all of these, so I guess I just want to ask, what do you all have to say? Do you like fusion? Do you have a favorite fusion spell or effect, or a favorite fusion monster for that matter? Let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, be sure to check out one of my videos in the sidebar to help me show up on your homepage, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and Simic Toadstool, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Dr. Reaper, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Mean King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast, and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthorak, A Random Pup, Blaze Rider, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Divine Dragon Felgrind 4123, Dr. Reaper RIP, again, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru 02, Manga Pages, Martin Moore 2468, Natiel the Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Shizuka Nijimura, Sir Knight JCB, Sphelia, Stephen Huntsman, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon down in the description, or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you want to see a theme that really loves its fusion monsters, I've got a gigantic video about all the elemental hero monsters right here. Or at least all the ones that were around when the video was posted. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.